How many people download illegally? Jennifer, don't put your hand up.
Just one?
Just one person. One person downloads illegally. Come on. My children. How many people's children download illegally? And you let them do this?
Well, how would you control it?
Exactly. How would you control it? We have a fantastic panel. I think we've got a couple of slides. So, Joe, do you want to put them up? Or is it just me, or is there another one you want to put up? No? Yeah, there it is, the internet. So I'm going to introduce the panel here quickly, and I don't know where I put it, so you might see porn just a minute. I'm really sorry. There it is. So Robert's not on. Robert Tercek is on my far right, and he just joined the panel, so we're really happy to have him. Robert Levine, you may have seen over lunch, has a book, and we're going to talk about some of that information that he, great speech at lunch, by the way. And then Raj Samtani is here as well too. He's from Peer Media, and I do need to sort of do a full disclosure, is that Jumpwire and Peer Media, we have a partnership that we haven't announced yet. Yes, we did. So we're talking, we've been working together for about a year now, is that? Yeah,
approximately.
Yeah, about approximately. And I'll talk a bit more about that. So we decided to put together this panel. Some of you know I work for a company called Jumpwire. And we last year got put in Fast Company's top 100 most innovative companies in media. We have no idea how we got on this list until we tracked them down and asked them. And they said it was to do with what we were talking about for BitTorrent. So what we were doing about 2 years ago is that we started trading, we started determining that all the stuff that was happening on BitTorrent was actually a good thing. Because for the most part, it was people sharing content. Yes, you could argue that it was illegally acquired content, but they were sharing content not because they hated it, but because they loved it. That was the big thing for me, and that's when we switched upside down. And what we did is we looked at the amount of that a piece of content was being downloaded, and then we went back and we sold that information back to the content companies. And we worked with companies like B-Sky B and BBC Worldwide, and all sorts of people were using our, and that's why we partnered with Raj's company, Peer Media, because we found out of all our research, they had the best BitTorrent tracking technology in the world. They've been around for a long time, and Raj is going to tell you a bit about his company. But the reason why we wanted to put this panel together is not for me to talk about Jumpwire. I would love to, but I'm not going to. Is that more because I think there's been a big shift. Yes, there's a lot of piracy going on, but I think people are starting to see the benefits of file sharing and how it works and how it can work for content. And that's the discussion we want to have today, and I think it's going to be a great discussion. We've got lots of people on different sides of the debate, but I think we're really coming to a place right now where piracy and file sharing is actually doing what it's supposed to do. It's showing new markets, it's taking us in the content business to new places, and it's helping build big businesses for new and emerging companies, but also for some of our big leading content providers. So, without further ado, I'm going to get Raj to come up. How it's going to work today is that because Matt's not here, Raj is going to do a quick presentation, maybe 5 to 7 minutes, just about his company and some things that they're working on, which I think are quite innovative. And then we're going to have a discussion. We're going to talk about it. I always take questions from the crowd. If you'd like to tweet, please go ahead, put hashtag CMPA. I'll try and look at my tweets during the discussion, and if I think there's a good question, if you don't want to put up your hand, then go ahead and do that, and I'll try and make sure that I get your question out. If I don't, it's not because I don't like you, it's because I didn't see it. And I'll answer it later. So without further ado, let's get Raj up here and to get him talk. Which one do you want to do that one first? Okay.
Well, thanks, Gavin. Appreciate the intro there. So I'm Raj Samtani. I run the sales and marketing for Peer Media Technologies. I just joined the company actually in November. Prior to that, I spent almost 10 years in the DRM and watermarking world. So I've kind of seen the other side of this whole technical protection measure issue that kind of is, I suppose, the reason why we have piracy is because some of those things didn't work as they were advertised to, the DRM and the watermarking. So I'm going to just jump in real quick and tell you a little bit about what Peer Media does. Coming back to that full disclosure that Gavin talked about, yes, we are partners with Jumpwire, and it's a great partnership. However, the majority of our business actually comes from enforcing anti-piracy issues for the studios. The data that we provide to try to glean insights and marketing type information that Gavin alluded to, at this point is a small part of our business. I just wanted to be clear about that.
It's going to get bigger.
It will hopefully get a lot bigger as time goes on, but the primary purpose of what we do today is to help the studios get a handle on remediation of the impact of piracy, whether or not we agree with what how big the numbers are, as Rob talked about in his keynote today. So very quickly, I'm just going to go through this. It's not intended to be a real plug. I just want to give you guys a feel for the types of things we do. So what we really do is we provide anti-piracy services and business intelligence services to track the unmonetized consumption of digital content. So it's primarily things like sending notices to ISPs, which then get forwarded on to the IP addresses that are doing things on BitTorrent. It's sending notices to take down links at hosting sites like Mega Upload, which, as you probably read, the guy that started the company is now having some legal problems in New Zealand. We also provide sort of business and evidentiary type of support to various firms as well as industry organizations that support the activities to kind of counteract some of the, as I said, the issues with piracy. We do business with pretty much the major studios, pretty much all of them, as well as several other companies that are in film, TV, music, games, software, and publishing. I'm not going to go into specifics, obviously, because I can't. But we do business with the majority of the larger companies that have a stake in this game. What we really do, it really comes down to two things. One is we try to reduce the negative impact. I like to use the analogy of the haystack. So there are people out there trying to find content, and they're using all sorts of places that are unauthorized. And our job is really to make the haystack bigger. So if you're trying to find the needle, you're going to be, if you're determined and you have a lot of time, you're going to find it. But our job is to make the casual pirate difficult. And we do that by either helping to curtail the supply or make the actual distribution more difficult, or to make it less desirable for that content to be downloaded by essentially reducing the value that these unauthorized sites. A lot of times you get these sites that essentially say, come to my site and you pretty much be able to find anything. It's our job to try to make that less effective. And then we do the second thing which Gavin talked about, which is to help use this information in ways that can help you make better marketing decisions in some cases. And we're starting to see that studios are starting to use, and content companies are starting to use that information to, in fact, think about their marketing in a slightly different way. Sometimes, yes, these are avid fans, and you can take the data and do things with it to, change windows, to, make timing decisions about how marketing spend is going to be affected into the market in different geographies. So that's the sort of thing we do. We do have a global reach. We've got about approximately 2,000 servers that are pretty much crawling the net 24/7, and we've got a whole staff of ops people that actually also take a look at what is being downloaded and verify that the folks that we're sending these notices to are actually doing the things that we catch them doing. So it's really about detecting what's going on, protecting through countermeasures like notices, and we also do some other things like decoying in some cases for things like games and music, which I'm not going to get into a lot of because unless somebody has a very specific question. And then we have this media intelligence and direct measurement, which provides business intelligence for this area. And so anyway, this is really the slide that kind of summarizes it. What we provide is the ability to look at what's happening, to take remediation activities, to do remediation activities for it, and then use the data in ways that can actually tweak your marketing mix. So that's kind of essentially what Peer Media does. And like I said, I didn't want to take a huge amount of time to do any pitch. You want me to go into the rest of it, or maybe we can start the discussion?
Let's
yeah.
chat a little bit.
All right. Great.
Thanks very much, Ryan.
All right.
Okay, so what I really wanted to do today is I do want to have this open discussion, thank you very much, about piracy, and I don't want it to be negative. I mean, we talk a lot about what's happening out there and where people are downloading, and quite frankly, I don't really care. What I want to look for is that we've got a lot of content producers here. What I care about is let's look at the positive. What are some of the positive things that we could be using? And there was, some discussion today, and we have seen some discussion where reason why we partnered with Peer Media was that we had an opportunity to be able to look at seeding content on BitTorrent. So as some of you may have heard of Pioneer One, some of you, it's a web program that's only been on BitTorrent. They have 6 episodes. They've made $70,000 or $80,000. A lot of it to do with donations, but also they've had a lot of sponsorship. So we thought we saw this a couple of years ago. We were involved in the test and the trials, and we're like, what would it be? When is the best time to be able to put content on the web and get it out there, and then which gets all the press and then allows people to buy it? And there was all sorts of research that's come out recently that shows that pirates, actually people who download on BitTorrent, spend more than the average person on content related to entertainment. So yes, they're downloading something for free, but they're actually, when they're purchasing stuff, they're purchasing a lot more. So we're seeing more and more of those reports coming out. And I think where I'd like to start right now is I'd just like to start with Robert Tercek on the right, and just give us your overview of piracy, where you stand, and just a little bit of insight.
Okay. First of all, let me make an opening comment here, which is I'm filling in for an executive from BitTorrent, and I just want to be very clear that I am not an advocate for piracy in any way, nor am I a spokesperson for BitTorrent. I can't really comment on their current situation. It sounds like even if they were heard here, they wouldn't be able to comment on it since they're being sued right now. So I don't represent that perspective in any way. My take on the issue of piracy is that there's a great deal of confusion around it, and that's deliberate. That's generally attributable to RIA and MPAA, the recording industry and the motion picture industry's efforts to confuse the issue and to take the moral high ground. So they stir up a feeling of moral outrage about this. I think there are some distinctions that could be usefully made. There's a big difference, in my view, between piracy and infringement. Infringement is when someone thinks that they can share something with someone else. That's a copyright infringement. That isn't stealing. There's a big distinction there. It's infringement. It's copyright infringement. That's clearly set forth what that might be. I believe the definition, I would like to get the sense of that from the audience or from the group here. I'd love to get your sense of what piracy actually constitutes. Are you talking about mega upload, these guys that are hosting huge numbers of files and focused on promoting that and generating a business around it and selling it? Is that generally what you're talking about?
Well, I think this is the debate we want to talk about, right?
Yeah.
So I think that what is piracy? How do we define it? Is it
because if it's file sharing, I think it's an overstatement to label all file sharing piracy.
I'll tell you how I define it. It's, as I've said in the presentation, it's the unmonetized consumption of premium content.
Okay, so I have never stolen music or a video in my entire life, nor would I. Work in this business. I support the companies. I work for the companies that create content. I do have a lot of the CDs that I own ripped to MP3 or to AAC, and I put that music on many different devices, and I listen to it on many different devices. So at what point have I crossed the line into unmonetized consumption?
You haven't, because remember, we talk a lot about people getting sued for illegal downloading. In the US, no one was sued for illegal downloading. Beat. Everyone was sued for illegal distribution. The tort is making available. People who uploaded files to file sharing sites were sued because they were engaged in illegal distribution. Some of them didn't know they were engaged in illegal distribution because if you're sharing the things that you downloaded, a lot of file sharing sites are designed so they don't actually tell you what you're sharing.
Okay, so that's interesting. So we actually
But
here
hold
we
on,
have
just
three
to
different definitions on a piracy. Your piracy is any unmonetized consumption. Yours is uploading of
That wouldn't be
content that's
my-
designed for other people to download. And mine is that there's a distinction between innocent file sharing, which I would call infringement, no question about it. That's copyright infringement, but I don't consider that theft.
I wouldn't say that. Forget about legally the definition. Forget about piracy. It's hard to find a legal definition of piracy.
If the three of us can't agree, I think you can see there's a certain amount of confusion, which is the point I was trying
But
to make
there's
at
a
the beginning of
difference
the
between
comments.
unauthorized downloading and unauthorized uploading. No one's gotten sued in the U.S. I don't can't speak to Canada.
Sure,
Only
I understand.
for unauthorized
You made your
downloading.
point. I get it. But the point I'm
Unauthorized
making is,
uploading.
if we can't arrive at a definition that the three of us agree to about what piracy is, then I guess I don't know how to answer the question you're raising, Gavin, which is when can piracy be good? I think if people are excited about music and movies and they want to tell their friends about it and promote them to their friends, I think that's an unquestionably good thing. Social media has demonstrated it can be a very powerful way, perhaps the best way, for people to communicate the virtues of new content. It's the greatest way to discover content ever.
Well, I guess the question for me is that let's move piracy aside a little bit and look at the consumer. And I think the reason why we wanted to put this panel together was to understand, the consumer and what they're doing. So yesterday I went and got, Robert's book. I went and bought it.
Thank you.
Chapters across the street. It's a great book. Excellent.
Also available on Brazil on unauthorized sites in Brazil.
Yeah, apparently I didn't find that. So what I did is I did a little
Good.
test. Is that we went out and I went and got the book. I bought it across the street at Chapters. They had 2 copies. It took me about 5 minutes. We went and typed it in. We went and found it. They had 2 copies. It was great. $31.99. And I was like, wow, this is great for paper, $31.99. Then I went to my iPad and I downloaded the book here and I paid for it again 2 times.
Love
And it was $13.99 here. This one I can share with people. I can give to you and say, oh, I read this book, it was really good, you should try it. This one I can't really share with anybody unless I give them my iPad. Then the next thing I did is I went online and I went to the Usenets and I looked at, all of them and went through and I was like, okay, well let's try and find one. So I found his book all over the place, audiobooks and that sort of stuff. But fortunately, someone's been doing a really good job because none of the links worked. So I couldn't actually download the book, which I was hoping to be able to do.
Illegally, you mean?
Well, not legally. I just wanted to download it and see what was going on. So again, it comes to this idea that I really believe as a consumer that here I can stand in the store and I can read through the book. I can leaf through it. I can check it out. I can look at it. On iTunes, I can look through it a little bit and check out what's going on. But on the web, if I hear about something and I want to download it and it's not available, I can go and find it somewhere else. And the check I use, because I build a lot of content as well too, is that if I can't find it in the places where I want to buy it, then I'm just going to go and get it. I'm the consumer, I have the power. If someone wants me to pay for that, I'm happy to let them pay. I'm happy to pay for it. But in most cases, if I want to find something obscure, it's not available. A perfect example is like 3 years ago when we were working with a large online company, and they started placing a lot of the stuff that was being pirated. They started placing it on a portal. I'm not going to say which portal it was, but you'd be able to figure it out. Big in the U.S. And what ended up happening is the piracy dropped on every single one. Because why? And Matt Mason would say this if he was here, is that people are lazy. I got it on my iPad. I had to actually go to a store to go and buy this. It was very difficult. I had to wander in. I had to find out where it was. I hadn't been in a bookstore actually in a year, and I was there with my wife, and we were like, this is interesting. This is kind of cool. This sort of takes me back. But we had to ask a guy, where is it? Whereas here, I was able to type in, free ride, be able to download it really quickly. On the web, I was even easier. I just typed in free ride, and it was actually a little bit harder because free ride is a well-known adventure sport. So everything came up, not the book. But once I typed in Robert's name, it popped up. But it was very hard to download.
My next book is going to be called Hot Lesbians. Because even if it's about something totally different, no one will ever be able to find an illegal copy. Sorry.
Yes.
Just saying.
Ambiguous
Throwing it out
metadata
there.
is one of our biggest problems when we're looking for stuff on the web. So you're absolutely right. You should name your next book something like that.
Whatever, man. It's trademarked already.
All right. So where I want to take this to is that here's a piece of content that I want and I've experienced and I've paid for a couple times. I couldn't actually download it for free. It's not something wildly known. But we do things at home where we download. And what I found is the reason why we do the downloading at home is not because I want to do something in quotes illegal. I don't think it's illegal. It's because it's easier for me to do. It's faster, it's more, I can find it right away. Even on my DVR, I mean, the problem is that the people who own the content put so many roadblocks in the way. So what I want to talk about today is I want to say, let's switch this around and forget about the definition of piracy. And tell all the people that came here today what I believe, and Raj, how you can sort of help us work this, is that how can we take our content that we have that maybe is not our premium content and put it on the web? What should we be doing to make our content really sing and get out there and get more promotion for us? And where I want you to start is I want you to start with some of the stats about how much downloading is going on. We know BitTorrent is 100 million to 200 million people a week. That is a massive audience a month. 100 to 200 million people are downloading on BitTorrent or sharing files on a regular basis. It's a massive audience. Yet we never hear anyone talking about accessing it. How can we start accessing this? We're at this point where there's a lot of people out there who have libraries of content, both in television and radio, who want to it's sitting on my shelf. Why don't I just get it out there? Can we talk a bit about that?
Look, I can tell you as an individual, not as a representative of Peer Media, whose business is actually based, as Rob mentioned earlier, on the way the DMCA and the safe harbors work today. So I can tell you, as a person that's involved in this ecosystem, in theory, I think it's a great concept that you're talking about. I mean, it's the age-old thing. I think you alluded to it in your talk. If you're a struggling artist and you want to get out there and get some distribution, well, great. Yes, you can use that. But once you're actually at a place where you need to recoup the money that you've put in, if you're making a movie or a TV show, this stuff can be pretty devastating. I mean, I've heard stories from folks that try to put out a movie, a smaller movie, and they can't get DVD licensing in certain countries because piracy is just so rampant that you can't get a single penny for your DVD rights in Spain, as an example.
But doesn't piracy really just show us new markets?
No.
Isn't it?
Hold on a second.
See, that's
hold on a second.
where,
I'm sorry. What you're saying is just not supported by statistics. I mean, you're talking about this as a problem with people not being able to get stuff. Statistically speaking, it's hogwash. The most popular pirated movie last year was Fast 5. This is not a movie you're like, oh my God, where could I possibly find this underappreciated cinematic gem? There's all these roadblocks. Wow, where am I going to find, oh my God, it's like, this is important. There's like a public interest in having me access it. Come on, let's get real. This is not a movie that's hard to find. It's just hard to watch. Sometimes you're talking about roadblocks. I prefer to call it a toll booth.
Right.
I'm not placing blocks between my content and you. I'm placing a toll booth between my content and you.
Well, then why are people downloading it? If it's everywhere and they can get it, are they downloading it because it's free? What was the statistics saying on that?
Well, the statistics say different things, but a lot of them, one of the reasons people download is because they can't get stuff. Another reason people download is because they don't want to pay.
Yeah, but what don't they want to pay? How much was it?
I don't care how much they want to pay.
Why? But that's supply and
Hold on. It's the wrong way to look at it. Someone said, Cory Doctorow, who's a prominent Canadian, said, the problem isn't piracy, the problem is obscurity. One of the problems with the debate on these issues in Canada is you're taking advice from a guy who writes young adult science fiction books. If I gave away my book for free, I might be more famous. Who cares? I can't go to my landlord and tell him about how many friends I have. Let me finish.
You can't go down that road. You're more famous, right? Then you get more speaking gigs, and then you're more. But if no one knows who you are, right? So if you get paid to do speaking gigs, right? So the philosophy is, and this is what we tell our clients, is that if you're going to make something that's old media, you definitely want to give it away for free. And no one's done it yet, right? But because everyone's got to pay for it. So what we hear is, and we deal with publishers all the time, people put out books like you do, and you know what they do? They go and buy them up, right? They go and buy up all the books so it looks like it goes up the ladder. Right, that's how they make sure it gets on the New York Times bestseller list.
That's not true.
The numbers how can you say it's not true? That's what people do.
The numbers you're talking about, to get on the New York Times bestseller list, you're talking about, let's say, I'm just guessing here, you're talking about maybe buying 10,000 copies at $30.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Hold on. That's $300,000. The average book advance for a nonfiction book like this is not that high.
I'm not saying you do it.
No, I'm not saying.
I'm saying this is what the publishers are doing.
Nobody does. That's crazy.
I had dinner with
you're making.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I go into my publisher.
All right, wait, guys.
It's not true.
Robert, I'm sorry, you're making an unsupported statement. And I had dinner with 10 authors about a month ago, and it was common knowledge. The number is 9,500 books, and there are services out there that will do the purchasing for you, so that it appears in the bestseller list on Amazon. And they said it's absolutely an investment worth doing, because once you land there, it's going to drive visibility, it's going to drive awareness. And every author in the room was not only aware of it, several of them have paid for that service. And they said it drives their business in speaking, it drives their business elsewhere, it gives them more visibility.
I find that
TV
extremely
bookings.
hard to believe.
Okay, well, I mean, you may feel that way. You might want to consider it, though. It might make your book more visible and might drive your career in other ways.
I couldn't afford. I go broke.
Well, hey guys, can we, guys, stop. If we can, I think we're conflating a bunch of issues. Okay?
No, we're not. I'm in a situation here where I'm like, I'm sitting across the table for my clients who are telling me this. I watch them pay for it. We do it on a regular basis, and I'm telling it's not supported. I've got Robert who's at the end saying the exact same thing from 10 authors, and then you're saying to me that you just find it hard to believe. This is the problem, right? We can't have this discussion if you're not going to respect what we're telling you.
I have a hard time imagining the numbers working out.
All right, let's find out if we can get a movie distributor to just go out and buy a bunch of box office tickets and do the same thing to get the answer on Monday morning. Maybe they are. I don't know. I doubt it. But maybe there are some folks in the movie industry that I just don't. To me, those things that you're talking about, speak to this notion of you want to get up this popularity curve, and then you could ride some sort of a momentum wave, and it'll make things better. But over time, that's not a sustainable way to do business.
Why not?
Okay.
It's supply and demand. If I can get when we look at the book side, right? We noticed when we did the books, right, that if you got onto the New York Times bestseller list, it was actually in our scope of work. They said they wanted to be on the New York Times bestseller list for 2 weeks. And what they normally did is they would buy a full-page ad for $20,000 in the New York Times, right, to drive the book, right? So it is how people do it.
Great, and you can do that with Facebook likes and
and it destroys
your
data.
That's all beautiful. Look, that's a nice disruptive model, okay? But when you're talking about an economic model that is based on something like windowing, right? And you have a substitute product that's available within hours of its first theatrical release with essentially a price of zero. I'm sorry, but I can't find another industry example where this notion of disruption actually has a substitute product with a price of zero. And I think that really is the issue. It's not really about convenience. It is, in fact, about an economic model that's broken by, as you pointed out, having regulation
The reason the economic model is broken is it's the wrong product in the wrong market.
Okay.
The internet's a copying machine. Every time you, on a browser, request a page, you're getting a copy of that page sent to you from a server. That's the environment that you're in. If you're going to do business in that environment, you're going to be in business with a copying machine. Okay. You've got to accept that reality. That's a tough one for most media companies to get their heads wrapped around, because they like to control the replication of their content and the manufacturing of those discs. So we've got a business that's hooked on selling shiny discs or books to people, and they're working in an environment where that model doesn't work anymore. Scarcity, or artificial scarcity, withholding your product, has traditionally been a very good way for media companies to extract greater fees. The example I use is the launch of satellite platforms. So in the late 1980s and early 90s, that was a fast-growing part of the TV business where people were launching satellite platforms all over the world. And most of the entertainment studios held back their wares, particularly for the premium movie channel. They would hold back their wares until very close to the date when they were going to roll out that service. And then strangely, interestingly, all the deals would close right around about the time, just about a month or two before that satellite service had to launch. The movie studios would finally find price points that made sense. I think the fact that the movie studios' international operations are all based in a 2-mile radius in Soho in London might have something to do with the fact that they were able to figure out exactly what time to close those deals. No collusion there, no collusion at all. But during that time, the studios were able to extract massive fees from those satellite operators, and they've done it successfully ever since on every platform that's launched. The problem is this platform doesn't operate that way. Anyone can upload, anyone can publish, anyone can distribute. And so suddenly, scarcity and withholding of content doesn't satisfy a market, doesn't extract more money out. What it does do is it encourages other people to get out there and post the content and make it
Why
available.
can I not copy this?
You can.
That's counterfeit.
Wait, what?
That's counterfeit.
Are you telling me the Canadian government is restricting the ability to copy money?
It's a good
That's
gag.
crazy.
No, it's a good gag, but actually this is what I'm referring to when I say that RIA has kind of confused the language here. There's a distinction between counterfeiting and copyright infringement, and that's a really.
No, but wait a minute. Let's.
You just breaking the law.
You just conflated the two. Oh, but there's a significant
No,
difference.
I didn't conflate the two.
I think
we deliberately did.
but Robert, yes, you can copy that. But
some-
the other issue is that there never is I've never in my life had a situation where I couldn't get a $20 bill if I went to a bank. If the bank wasn't open, I couldn't get it. But there was never a situation where I could not go and get it. So that's why I think there's the confusion. There's lots of things where I cannot go. I cannot get the video. If I have find something shared on Facebook and it's not, so page 1, the Times thing, a perfect example, documentary. Go and try and download that somewhere.
Are you uncomfortable with the idea that not everyone has access to all the entertainment they want?
Yes, I'm uncomfortable with that.
I'm fine with that.
But I'm not.
No, by the way,
I want it whenever I want it, wherever I want it.
Yeah, I'm very uncomfortable.
And I'm willing to
like
pay
most
for it.
Americans with the idea that not everyone has. I'm very uncomfortable with
It's
the
very
fact that
elitist,
some people
though.
can't get the health care they want. No, it's not elitist. It's support of a market.
Why not? Why shouldn't everyone have access to the entertainment that they want? Why shouldn't everyone have access to universal health care?
Some kind of birthright? Wait.
In
Sure.
this book,
come on.
Yeah, if
in
I'm
the
willing to pay
Universal-
for it.
The Universal Declaration of Human Rights lays out very clearly, I have the right to control. I have moral rights in my work,
Right.
material rights in my work. That's not accepted in law everywhere. It is in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I have yet to see a human rights document that gives me the right to watch Game of Thrones anywhere I want. So my question is, human rights people, what are you waiting for, man? You behind the times? Game of Thrones is an inalienable human right. What the hell is taking you so long?
But let's we want to extrapolate that, right? So if you look at Finland and Norway, right? They have looked at the internet and said that it is a human right. You must have access in that country.
There's also a religion in Sweden.
Right.
You know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah,
It's
there's
a tax
religion.
shelter, I think.
It's a tax shelter.
I'd be I'm a little suspicious of that.
There's a religion.
But here's a situation where it may be, and I'm just going to go on to spur debate, that maybe the Human Rights Declaration, this is going to be crazy, might be wrong.
Might be.
Maybe it's time to change. Maybe it should be. When was that written, by the way?
After World War II.
Right. So maybe it's a little old.
So
Was the internet around during World War II? No. So maybe what they're
legal
declaring there,
authority does
maybe
that
you
mean?
shouldn't have the right.
You've quoted it twice today, but what legal authority does it have? And if it doesn't have any, why are you bringing it up?
I think the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is an interesting document. It certainly is.
Fine, it's interesting. There's a lot of interesting
EU,
stuff.
okay.
But what bearing does it have?
Copyright's a fundamental right in the EU. You'd rather have that?
So
A
let's be
fundamental
clear.
right in the EU.
Copyright.
Europe is this landmass across the ocean.
Yeah, fine. You're amusing, but you're not great at making it, sustaining a point, because I'm trying to understand the argument you're trying to make. Copyright is not property. Copyright
Of course not.
is granted in the U.S. It's granted by Congress, and it's Congress's right to determine whether or not someone gets it. It's a monopoly. It's a temporary monopoly given to the creator of a work.
Correct.
So it's a chance for them to extract some benefit from it, provided that it moves forward the arts and sciences. Right, it's the same thing as patent, similar concept to patent. Copyright's been hijacked by the media business
I agree.
to reinforce their business model. And they're trying to extend this into this domain on the internet where, frankly, you're not talking about worldwide, and unfortunately, we don't have a worldwide copyright regimen. And the approach that they're taking here is some people would consider it almost like a blackmail racket. So this is not my perspective. I'm going to be very clear about that. But I've observed the issue, and I thought I'd share this with you. Peter Sunde, who was the spokesperson for the Pirate Bay, recently wrote a post that I thought was quite interesting, where he talked about the copyright mafia. And so it was interesting in the High Court case in the UK, they weren't actually interested in finding out who the owners of the Pirate Bay were. They weren't interested in shutting down the business necessarily. What they were very interested in was coming after telecoms companies. Telecoms is a much bigger business than the entertainment business. And what the record industry is interested in getting is a toll from all the traffic that goes through the telecoms business. They'd much rather extract that toll. And of course, you can imagine then every other copyrighted work, or the publishers of those copyrighted works, would seek to do something similar. Again, that's not necessarily the view that I'm trying to express, but I thought it was an interesting point of view that doesn't seem to be included in the debate today, so here I am representing it on stage.
Sunda is, I would, as someone who's covered the music business quite a bit, I would not hold label executives forward as paragons of honesty.
Right.
However, Sunda makes them look like choir boys. You're talking about a criminal operation that was funded by Carl Lundstrom, who's a main supporter of the far-right Swedish party, which is pretty darn close to fascism. You're talking about
And
someone...
your point is?
A nasty bunch of people.
Okay, so...
They constantly
they're-
hid their money from taxes.
They're bad people.
Well, they were breaking several different kinds of laws. My point is, the Pirate Bay was a for-profit enterprise that relied on getting things for nothing. What you see as
But
this
the point I'm making is the
blackmail
spokesman
is
for the
charging
company,
for stuff.
the spokesman for that company said he was surprised to see they weren't even interested in bringing them to justice. They weren't even interested in coming after the Pirate Bay. What the copyright owners were coming after was telecoms. And they were fearful that a ruling against that particular company or the founders of that company would inhibit their ability to go after telecoms to extract a fee. That's his view. Look, I'm not going to defend the guy.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here because we've only got a few minutes left, and Raj, I want to give you the next word. But I do want to put out there if there are questions. Okay, there's one back there. Raj, do you want to jump in on that?
No, I think we're Go ahead with your question.
Yes.
I liked your phrase of for-profit company that relies on having free content, if that was a reasonable quotation. Because that's what ISPs are. I mean, there's a reason why they're going after the ISPs. If the ISP had an economic interest in controlling that flow of content, other than just acquiring more subscribers who can get the content for free, then it would stop overnight. They certainly have the ability to do it, they just don't have an economic interest in it. Now, one of the proposals that's been brought forward in this country comes from the Songwriters Association, which is to establish a kind of license for material downloaded, to have most of that material downloaded from servers run by the ISPs, and to be able to monitor usage so that the money can be distributed fairly. Everybody seems to hate that model because they'd rather be right than actually install what you're calling a commercial marketplace on the internet. But there's nothing, if you can set the price right, there's nothing essentially wrong with that model. Our problem is that we have given the ISPs a free ride. Fundamentally, most of their traffic is video now.
That's a great title for a book.
Which one?
Free ride.
It's a very good point. I think that we would have to basically break down what ISPs are, and you know, they came from the book-to-board world, and the fact that they're organizations that are generally not for profit. But if you look at something like Bell and Rogers and those sorts of things, then I think we can have a larger discussion. I'm going to throw it over to Raj. You deal a lot with the ISPs.
Yeah, so to that point, you know, the way that copyright has been dealt with, there's usually one of three ways. And again, I'm not, in this conversation, I'm not representing Peer Media, this is me talking. It's either been through some bilateral license between two parties, party that owns the copyright and the party that wants to distribute it, or it's been done through some sort of a legislative means, through some sort of a fiat, or the third way is the way that you talked about, which is through some sort of mediated levy. So it's either a license legislation or levy. And I think what we're talking about in some respects kind of goes across those boundaries. I mean, the fact is, yes, you're right, it is a copy machine. And maybe the guys that are running some of these companies do think in terms of old media. And yes, they maybe aren't ready to be disrupted. But as I pointed out earlier.
But I don't really want to. I don't want to talk about that. Really.
Okay. All right.
I think that now we've got 15 minutes left. Okay. Let's be positive. Let's look forward. With all the knowledge you guys have up here, what can people out there do? Like, what are 3 things that people should be working on that maybe hasn't been heard about? I mean, the one I will mention is that you use BitTorrent to distribute your content and build your brand. Use social media to augment that brand and then sell in behind that by using stuff that's been paid for by old media. So library content for television, radio, podcast content, that sort of stuff. And by using meta tagging and tagging it appropriately so that it's found by these people who are mavens, who are distributing content at a very high level, you can sort of bridge this gap between traditional and new.
Look,
Raj, what would you say to people out there? What are some of the things they can be doing? Because, I mean, the title of this was the ins and out of illegal downloading. Everybody knows that their content's being downloaded. How can they use it for their advantage out there?
Yeah, so we do provide services, and thankfully, all the major content companies we deal with are starting, there are folks that deal with big data in these content companies, and they're looking at this information as just another input to all the other pieces of data they get in terms of Twitter feeds and Facebook likes, and so they're incorporating some of this data in.
I mean, that's why we came to you guys was for this data, right?
And that's all great, right? That's all great. But the fact is that there is still a tremendous amount of piracy taking place.
How big a percentage is it? Like, in terms of everything that everybody's watching, is it 10% of everything out there?
It's very difficult to quantify. I think you pointed that out too. It's very difficult. I'll tell you why. Because, for example, on BitTorrent, right, we can sit there and have a pretty good idea of how many seeders there are for a file, and that's what we're tracking. And you can take a look at how many people are actually by the number of swarms. You know how popular that thing is.
Right.
But we can't tell you how many people actually downloaded and saw that movie.
And more importantly, sorry, I'm interrupting, but I'm supporting.
Yeah.
You can't tell how many people would have bought it if it hadn't been available free. Because people say, you hear people on the other side say, wait a minute, even if your movie was downloaded illegally 1 million times, that doesn't add up to 1 million lost sales.
Right.
Of course.
That's right.
The only thing more ridiculous than saying every illegal download is a lost sale is saying that every illegal download is no lost sales. It's somewhere in the middle. Hard to say where.
Okay. So we are in fact working with data, for example, from Cyberlockers. There are ways now to...
Can you define what a Cyberlocker is?
A Cyberlocker is the kind of thing that Mega Upload was doing. This is it's different from Nutella or LimeWire or BitTorrent. This is, you just go to a website and say, give it to me. And you get the damn thing, either download or
to be clear,
to
to make it simple for everyone, PeertoPeer is BitTorrent. These are Usenets, or these are on the back of an HTTP, so a website. You go to the website and you watch it.
It's just a website. You can either watch it.
And you guys blast away the links.
Yes,
we
work on taking down those links. But by taking down the links, you can't tell how many people are actually downloading it.
Right. Okay. But they're not downloading; they're streaming it from the Cyberlockers.
No. The Cyberlockers also enable downloading.
Okay.
Okay. You can have it completely unencumbered in fairly pristine quality. Fairly quickly, and that's actually more insidious because there isn't any magic. You don't have to learn about how to use BitTorrent, and you don't have to go down and download a torrent.
So you've got PeertoPeer,
right?
You've got Cyberlockers, and you've got Usenets, right?
Usenets are the old guy from the university or that.
But they're huge.
They are huge.
I mean, that's where I go to get stuff I need when I need it.
Those guys.
That's what all the engineers are using.
Yeah, we don't even deal with those guys because these are very tech savvy people.
So is there anything else that people should know about PeertoPeer, Cyberlockers, Usenets? Is there anything else that's on your radar?
PeertoPeer, which is traditional peer-to-peer like Nutella, LimeWire, those sorts of protocols. You've got BitTorrent.
Yeah.
which is its own thing, and you've got these Cyberlockers, which both do direct download as well as streaming.
Okay.
So those are the four major areas that we're watching. The business intelligence products we provide today are focused on BitTorrent and peer-to-peer. And we're now
Are you seeing less traffic in BitTorrent and more in
surprisingly,
Cyberlockers?
The Cyberlockers just went up, extremely high over the last couple of years because it was a fairly new phenomenon. And these are the people that use Cyberlockers are folks that actually start on some other search engine, and it's the links are just available, and they go from that search engine to this place, and there's a whole ecosystem of people making millions and millions and millions.
So what's the number one Cyberlocker? Was it Mega Upload? Because now Mega Upload's gone.
It was.
So what's the one that you guys monitor the most?
If
people wanted to go and test one.
Well, quite a few of them are gone. I had to send my presentation. I was over in Europe. I had to send it here. So I was looking for a file sharing site that I could send the file because it's too big for email. And I was quite surprised because I did a search on the web, and half of the things that were returned as searches, the websites are completely gone when you go to them. So since the U.S. government, the New Zealand government rated Mega Upload, half these sites are
well, that's not entirely true, but
they'll reappear or reemerge.
There was a little bit of turmoil for about a week and a half, and we've seen the Cyberlocker space. It's shifted around a little bit, but the activity hasn't really. If the number of links are a proxy, the activity hasn't come down that much.
Okay, I'm going to hold you there because I haven't got a lot of time. And I do, Robert, could you just talk about some of the things that you might want, that you've read about, heard about, that people here could use to their advantage?
Yeah, I just want to say, because I am against, first, I think for piracy, it's more of eroding a legitimate market than it is replacing a specific amount of sales. I'm against that. I think someone's has their hand in my pocket, which is an inexact metaphor. But there are certain things it can help people. If you give something away, you can often sell something else. I think bands have had a lot of luck selling deluxe box sets. But the other thing is, I think it really depends on what you're doing. I mean, if you're selling, let's say, a science fiction book, you might want to give it away and sell the sequel. In terms of me, I don't really think that would help me because the audience that I think I can reach isn't necessarily that.
What was your when you sat down with your publisher, what was your strategy? Because I need to ask, because I went and bought this book, right? And I had to go and buy it again on my iPad. Now I've already bought it once, and I looked through the book, I'm like, okay, there must be a code in here I can use on my iPad because I've already bought it once, but there wasn't. Right, and I went to the iPad and I downloaded it and I said, was there anything, can I put in the book, was there any unique thing? And here is me as a customer going, I want it in both places because I travel a lot, so I'm gonna want to take my iPad, I don't have to take this book with me. But yet, I had to pay for it twice, right? So when you guys did your strategy, did they sit down with you and say, okay, this is how we're gonna release it? Was there any ever talk of holding it back? Or
no, because I essentially, in effect, sold those rights. I mean, a lot of artists complain about, my contract won't let me do this. I think that's a little facetious. Artists, especially recording artists, will say, the label won't let me do that. And often what they're saying is reasonable, but you have to realize, when you take the check, you give up some decision-making power. Random House wrote me a check. It's not that big a check, don't get excited. But in return, I gave up some decision-making power. I'm an adult, I read the contract, I thought it was a good decision then, I still think it's a good decision now. I gave them some ideas.
So but you're not worried about your brand being impacted by someone who's like, I've had to buy it twice? No, okay.
No, I mean, look, in terms of what.
So your brand is not as important to you as the upfront fee?
I don't really want to be. No, I mean, I don't know if my brand is not likable anyway. What?
Are you actually the moderator?
Who's what?
I'm swearing if you're the moderator.
Yep.
Sure?
Me or him?
Who?
You.
Are you on crack cocaine or are you drunk?
There's a seat on the other side if you want to debate.
Yeah, no, it's
No, that's fair.
job.
Hold on. That's part of me. I'll answer.
Would you like to be the moderator?
I don't know if
for the last 5 minutes?
Hold on. I don't know. I think there's a certain school of thought that
What's going on here today? Is everyone drunk?
There's a certain school of thought that says I'll sell more books, records, whatever, if I'm more likable. I'm not sure that that's true. If you look at what sells books, this is a gross generalization. If you look at what sells this kind of books, research seriously, whether you agree or not, seriously reported nonfiction. In the US, it tends to be the New York Times and NPR.
Right.
I was lucky enough, I got a very good review in the Times, some other mentions of the Times, not much love from NPR. The book did okay. That's in terms of sales. In terms of my brand, I would like to be known as someone who wrote a good book that's respected by people who are interested in these kinds of books. Whether or not, it's not very important to me to be known as someone who wrote a good book and gave it to you at the price you wanted because you wanted to be friends. That's very important to someone else. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. It's just not that important to me. I as a writer, I really want to be respected by my peers. That means a lot to me. You can make fun of me. That's just, when I got a review in the Times, I thought a great review in the Times, I thought it was the best thing ever. Laugh if you want, that's just me. To be known as someone who I will not be undersold because I'm Crazy Eddie, to me, doesn't mean much. Maybe I'm totally wrong. As far as my brand, I don't really aspire to have can I say that I don't aspire to have a brand? I don't want to be a brand. I wrote a book, I hope you like it. I'm here discussing it because I think these issues are really important. Otherwise, I wouldn't have written the book in the first place. No one gets into journalism for the money, really, believe me. But I don't necessarily want to be like, when you think of Rob Levine, here are the 5 words you think of. It doesn't matter to me. I'd like to, at some point, in 3 years, I'd like to write another book about something totally different. And I hope people like that too. And the book means a lot to me. Maybe you hate it, whatever. It means a lot to me.
Okay.
But
I
don't care if people like me or not. I don't really care.
So I'm going to move on to Robert at the end. Robert, what can you share with the audience in terms of strategy, what they should be thinking about? We've talked a bit about piracy, we've talked a bit about copyright, but what are some of the things that they could take away that maybe you've seen in your travels that might be helpful for people who are in the content business to looking out forward?
So I think the biggest challenge that you have if you're introducing a new work is discovery. It's hard to find things. The myth that I spoke about this morning is that content is scarce. It simply isn't true. We're awash in content, and there's a lot of substitutes. So if you can't find the content you're looking for, if you don't have anything particular in mind, there's an awful lot of other content out there that can satisfy that, whether it's video or text or music. So for most people who create content, most companies that are launching content, the challenge is how do you build an army of fans that are going to talk about it? How do you generate viral buzz? How do you build social discovery? One way to do that is to give people something to share. If you don't want to share the whole work, because I understand that that might undermine the business model, one thing you can do very successfully is share a chapter. A best-selling author, as a friend of mine, did a brilliant job of this. He created a social sharing tool, which he paid for out of his own pocket as an author. He went out and hired the company to build this tool for him. And it allowed anybody who was a fan of his work to embed this in their site. So they could put it in their blog, they could put it on a MySpace page, they could put it elsewhere, wherever they had a web presence, and tell their friends about it. And it had a discount code so that they could purchase that book. And in some cases, if those people had Amazon merchant accounts, they actually got credit back for it. So he turned his fans into resellers of his book. I thought that was quite a smart approach. It used social media in a way that rewarded fans. It didn't
How would you do
shut
that in
people down.
video? Have you seen anyone done it in video or in movie
No.
content at all?
No, I haven't seen it in video.
I guess a promo, like a theater release, like a
Even
billboard.
that, the studios treat that stuff like it's precious. When I would shotgun it out there across the web, I had this problem with TV companies because they try to hold the trailers back or the promos back as if they're scarce. Doesn't make any sense to me. It would be easy to build a widget that would allow somebody to copy paste that promo right into their page and blog about it, and suddenly you've turned that person from a copyright infringer into a fan who's going to communicate about it and tell people about it and get more views and drive more awareness. Look, the problem with Windows is the movie studios spend about $30 million or more on every movie that they want to release. That's a lot of money. And they build up awareness around the release of that picture. And then they think they're going to do it again 6 months later when the DVD comes out. The DVD window seems to be eroding pretty quickly, and all the subsequent windows seem to be collapsing. So that window process that used to be 32 months is starting to telescope down into maybe a 6-month window. I suspect that very soon the movie business is going to start to realize that they're in the simultaneous release business, where they're going to release across all platforms. The only reason that hasn't happened, in my opinion, is that it would probably destroy the theater business, because the screens will start closing, and then you won't get to the box office numbers that set the price for all the subsequent windows. So that's sort of what's holding it back. So the motion picture business doesn't want to kill the theatrical business yet.
I'm going to hold you right there one quickly. I've got time for one question. Is there anyone out there with a pressing question? No one? Yes.
How's Silverlight just doing? It sounds like the problem we're talking about is it's about price. You've gotta
Yeah.
charge $30 for a book when you could make it available for nothing really. You don't have to factor in paying the author.
Are you talking about Silverlight or Ultraviolet?
Oh, sorry, yes, I'm talking about Ultraviolet.
Ultraviolet, I think it's dead on arrival.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
just
It would
define
make-
just
Sure.
guys, before we get into this discussion,
It's a-
can we just define
It's
ultraviolet
a cool
quickly?
concept. So the idea was buy a DVD, and with it you get an unlock code that allows you to access it on other platforms, so you can watch it on the device of your choice.
By the way, I just wrote an IEEE article on ultraviolet. If you're interested, I'll send it to you if you give me your card.
So
Yeah,
it's
sorry.
a cool idea. It would have been awesome 5 years ago, so it's a little late to the market. The first issue, of course, is DVD sales are down. The second one is not enough titles are available. The third one is if I already have DVDs in my collection, there's no way to retroactively make those available to Ultraviolet.
They're
They're trying to
yes.
solve it, yeah, but they're very late to the game, and consumer behavior is migrating now to all these over-the-top services. I think in general, the issue here is it's about shifting away from that mentality of selling a shiny disc, a product, and start to turn your mentality towards offering a service. That's a really big shift, and I'm not going to try to underplay how difficult that is for media companies. They're hooked on the needle of selling shiny discs, and it's extremely difficult for them to think about services. The music industry makes it incredibly difficult for innovators to launch new services like Spotify. Not only do you have to pay upfront licensing fees in the tens of millions of dollars to get the rights to the music, that's very hard for a startup company to do, but you also have to give up an equity stake in your business as well to the music labels. So they're extorting money. And let's bear in mind, there's only 4 labels and it'll soon be 3. So you're really dealing with a cartel that has the power to set price in this marketplace. And while that might sound, well, what's the issue with that? Maybe that's not such a bad thing. The problem is they're stifling innovation at a time when their core business is eroding. What they really ought to be doing is licensing their content on reasonable terms so that it can be made more available to more customers in more territories around the world, and thereby acclimate the audience that they should pay and not file share and not illegally download content. If they make their content available, this piracy issue will go away.
Thank you very much. cbcmusic.ca, check it out. It just launched last week. It's a fantastic service. All Canadian bands on it. I've been using it. It's exactly what you're talking about. They put up the bands and you can make your own playlists and you can listen to great music. I've discovered so much new music on there, all Canadian. I would check that out. I would like to take a quick moment, if you wouldn't, and thank our panel. And they're available afterwards. We're going to pop them over there if you'd like to chat with them afterwards. And again, thank you for attending. And I guess I wasn't really a moderator. Bye.